What is it about live streaming that gravitates to you? Like, why are you drawn to that as like your primary way of creating video content for YouTube and Instagram?
I have a lot less nerves sitting down to live stream twice a week than I do to sit down and record the podcast or sit down and record like a video for upload. That actually, it takes me longer sometimes to create things to be uploaded than to just live stream it. But I like the instant feedback. I like connecting with my audience quite a lot. And I like having a conversation. I love that feedback because it makes me a better content creator. And it also makes me go one step further to explain things better.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Video Craft Show presented by Video Husky. I am John Santiago, and in case you're new around here, it's my job to interview content creators, specifically those on video, about their stories and experiences of building an online audience. And this week, my guest is Emily Baker. Now, if you are looking for a legal take on news and pop culture that's informative, educational, and entertaining, then look no further than Emily's channel. Emily has a sassy and smart approach to legal commentary, and it's drawn thousands of fans to her YouTube channel. In May of 2021, she reached an important milestone in her creator journey when she reached 100,000 YouTube subscribers. Now, Emily has been creating content on YouTube for a while now, 5 years to be exact, but it wasn't until recently that her channel really took off. In 2020, she skyrocketed to YouTube fame by committing to herself to becoming one of the platform's top legal commentators. In fact, since then, her videos have been referenced and featured on other big-name creators' channels such as Phil DeFranco and the H3 podcast. Emily brings a wealth of legal experience to social media. Before YouTube, she spent 10 years as a deputy district attorney with the Los Angeles County DA office. She left that career behind as a lawyer in 2017 and has since built a sustainable business and career for herself as a creator and solopreneur. In this episode of the Video Craft Show presented by Video Husky, I chat with Emily about a variety of topics. I missed a word there. A variety of topics when it comes to her career as a lawyer, as well as her career now as a creator. We talk about how she managed to stay motivated as a creator when her audience was much smaller and the views were much smaller. We also talk about her decision to niche down her channel to focus exclusively on legal commentary. And then we talk about live streaming and the role that it plays in building her community, including how she moderates the conversations that happen in live chats. So before we get into this conversation, I want to remind all of you to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and you'll be informed of any time we have new content coming up on this channel. You can also subscribe to our podcast wherever it is that you get your podcasts. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, you name it, any platform you can find us. All you have to do is just go to the search box and type in The Video Craft Show, and you can go ahead and subscribe to our channel there. And subscribe to our email list. We've got a free gift for all of you creators out there. If you aren't on the list already, you can get a copy of our free scripting template. It will help you script your videos in a much more efficient manner if you are a YouTube creator or a video creator for that fact. For that fact, what is that? I think I just ran out of words to say there. Yeah, let's go ahead and just jump into this conversation that I had with Emily D. Baker here on the Video Craft Show presented by Video Husky. Emily Baker, Esquire, thank you for joining me on this edition of the Video Craft Show presented by Video Husky. It is awesome to have you on.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here. I love it. I don't use the Esquire much these days, so it's always fun to be like, yes, the 3 letters, we paid so much for them. They still belong there. So thank you for having me.
What is the history there with the whole Esquire deal with attorneys and lawyers?
I should know this. It denotes a member of the bar, so somebody licensed to practice versus just the degree, which is a JD. So you have a Juris Doctorate to be an attorney, and then when you pass the bar, I don't even know what how the Esquire connotation to being a practicing attorney started. I don't know.
Gotcha. Well, it's just one of those special things, right? Like if you're a doctor, you have MD after your name and whatnot. So that's cool, though. We're going to get into that, obviously, in this conversation that we have of just your whole career. And I was very impressed when I watched your TED Talk. I mean, very inspiring, and just going back into the archives of your channel and where you came from, where you started, a couple of years ago, and to where you are today it's an incredible story. And so
it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah, I'd really like to start there, just before YouTube, right? You worked as a deputy district attorney for Los Angeles County for 10 plus years, correct?
I did. So when I left the DA's office in 2017, it had been over 10 years of being employed as a DA. And then before that, it was really law school. It was undergrad, law school, the work I did during law school. I worked as a research attorney for 2 judges while I was waiting for bar results, because bar results take quite a while. So you take the bar. If you take it just after you graduate from law school in May, thereabouts. COVID has messed everything up, I'm sure, for students today. But back in my day, because we're so old, back in my day when the California bar exam was still 3 full days long, but you would take the exam in July and then get results the week before Thanksgiving. So it was such a long wait till November. And most places, particularly in public service, didn't hire until you had bar results. Some firms would hire people pending their bar results, but most public entities, you have to have passed the bar before you could get hired. And the LADA's office was just coming off of a hiring freeze when I finished law school and passed the bar. So it was a very competitive year. So getting those bar results meant a lot, because then I could interview with that big class that they were going to be hiring, because otherwise you have to wait to take the bar till February and not get results again until May. So it's a whole plotting of how it's going to go, hinging on that one test.
Yeah, one of the things that I was wondering about coming into this conversation was just, if you ever think about how your career as an attorney, as a lawyer, has helped you on this path that you're on now as a content creator. Because I imagine, to be a successful lawyer, to be a good lawyer, you have to be very detail oriented. And I imagine that is something that you have to still deal with today, as essentially as like a sole proprietor, a business owner, solo creator, in this realm of how you operate today.
I still struggle with it because I am, and I share this a lot, I'm ADHD and dyslexic. So the impulsivity part of content creation, because I love the content creation part, the detail part I don't always love. And I'm like, I forgot to do this and I forgot to do that. You'll see it on my live streams when I'm like, and I just tell my channel, I'm like, we're professionals here, people. This is what happens. But I feel like I've created a joke around that. So it just, when things inevitably get messed up because of something I've done, I'm like, it's me, I've done it. But it was much easier at work, but I think it's also part of what led to my burnout, is that I was working in a way that didn't work for me, trying to overcome the way I naturally work. And now I've built in help with that. And I've built in, I keep a notebook next to me and like a Google Doc open so I don't forget things as I'm going. But it does take some time to train yourself to find the little quirks that work for you. And I never really thought of myself as creative, but I find that my process is fairly creative in the way that I research things and the way that my thoughts flow together. And most creatives will have that, where they're like, I love doing this creation part. It's all the other stuff that you forget. Now I just have recurring lists of, if a video is going live, this is what you do. If you're live streaming, this is what you do. And I've built those in just to help me so I don't get tired trying to do all the things.
Yeah, you're able to, I have a similar, I think, setup as well, just for this podcast, because you find that there are certain elements and tasks that are just redundant. They're going to repeat themselves over and over again. And so if you can kind of systematize it and break it down, that way you're not having to think, wait, did I do this? Did I turn on the manual record or not turn on the manual record here? It helps a lot. But as a creative, or just somebody who doesn't necessarily think that way, like systematically, it's something that you have to learn how to do over time.
Yeah, you have to build systems in. And I think that's with anything. I wish I had done, and I naturally did that as a way to not forget things, because I hated that last minute feeling of, oh my God, I forgot to do this one part. And I would double and triple and quadruple check stuff in my career that was going to the court, so I didn't miss part of what needed to be done or submitted, so I didn't leave things out, so I didn't have pages that weren't like bait stamped or whatever it was. And I've brought those systems into YouTube. And I tell anyone, like, if you don't like creating systems, if you're a creative, hire someone to help you create those systems together with you that you will work with, because otherwise things will get forgotten and you'll burn out. And we see this with other YouTube creators when they joke about like, oh, I haven't answered my email in 6 months. That's not good. That's not good at all. There's money in that email. There is money in the email inbox. You've got to manage it.
Yeah, I really wonder, one of the things I was also wondering about coming into this conversation was just the fact that you talked about this in your TED Talk, was just having your identity so wrapped up in being a lawyer. And I'm wondering how these days, like, how do you see your identity, as a human being? Do you find yourself attached to the identity of being a creator, or are you also kind of just leaving it open?
So it's such a great question. And it was something that was very hard when separating from my career, because it feels like you're cutting out and like mourning a part of you when your entire identity is so wrapped up in what you do for a job. And a lot of professionals fall into this, but it's not just professionals. Some people find that their identity is wrapped into a job in a negative way. It's like, oh, I just do this, or oh, I just do that. And there's almost a shame or embarrassment. What you do for money is not who you are. And that's the same being a creator. I have a purpose in my content. Not everybody's on board with my purpose. Not everyone's on board with my content. But if my content was my identity, the negative comments or the occasional person who has an issue with you on Twitter would feel very personal. When the content has a purpose and the purpose serves the audience, it doesn't really matter how people engage with it. If they don't like it, they can keep going. So no, I don't put my identity on my content, my live streams. It's just an expression of who I am, but it's more of my purpose or my mission, not who I am. Who I am is still, and I said it in my TED Talk, kind of a shiny, sparkly badass, but my goal is to help people understand. I just happen to have training in law, so I help people understand law. It's always been my gift to break down things that are complex and try to make them more accessible. That's what I loved about doing white collar crime work. As a DA, I could take concepts that were kind of boring and more detailed and break it down into the simple stuff so juries could understand. And I think that that's what my content does for my audience. It takes complex lawsuits or the back end of the law stuff that's going on and distills it down into concepts that people can understand, so they know the real story of what's going on in the headlines of the stories they might be curious in. So, long way of saying no, I don't, my content is not who I am. And we see this with creators too, right? Younger creators who are trying to grow, and they're like, oh, but my content was this and that's who I am. Who am I now? As I'm maturing or aging, who am I now? And it's like, no, find out who you are first, make content for your audience that serves a purpose. And then you can continue to grow and change, and your content may reflect that. But if you want to grow and change your content and it is who you are, then you get that identity crisis bit.
Where does that come from for you? This attraction or magnetism to want to break down complex topics. Have you always just been somebody like that your entire life, that likes to just take something that is so complicated and then simplify it for a bunch of people to understand?
I think so. I was probably a pretty annoying kid. I won't deny that I was that kid who, when like people would get into a fight, I'd be like, so what you're saying is this, and what you're saying is that, but what she's saying is this. So where's the middle of that? And even with teachers, I'm like, if I'm understanding you, and they're like, you don't need to restate what I said. I'm like, but I do need to restate what you said because I don't understand you. And me restating it helps me understand. And I don't know if it's just that it was me simplifying things so that I could better understand them. And then that's just naturally how I took to law, was let me distill this down so I can understand it in its most basic form. And because it's easy to explain complex things in a complex way, it's much harder to explain complex things in a simple way. And I think that the gatekeeping of law leads to a lot of frustration. And I also don't like misinformation, if you will. So when I see people going, oh, this is being sued over that, it's like, well, actually, that's not what it is. It's this. And in law, you can have some of that. This is the situation. This is what the law says. But it's hard for everyone to access that because it's gatekept behind hundreds of thousands of dollars of legal education. But they're the rules that govern all of our lives. And I really do think people should be able to access and understand why things are happening around them. I mean, if anything else, we are particularly in the US, we are a government of laws and lawsuits. And not having kind of some fundamental understanding of that is hard. And I think it's kind of bullshit, honestly.
What is the process for you? What does that look like for you when it comes to, even for like your YouTube videos, right? And when you're streaming and whatnot, how are you processing all of this information? You mentioned that you have a notebook with you, you take notes, you have a Google Doc open. I mean, is it kind of just capturing things as they come and then rereading them before you go live or start creating content? What does that process of just breaking things down kind of look like for you?
So it helped me to first get really clear on what the purpose of my content was, so I decide what stories I'm covering. There's no shortage of legally related stuff. It has to be something that, one, is interesting to my audience, but two, that helps them understand something that we might not otherwise understand. If it's really cut and dry, there's no point in me just rehashing it other than mentioning maybe that it's happening. So does it help people understand something that's going on, like the Britney Spears conservatorship or, the Kardashian makeup drama or whatever YouTube drama it is? But also, if people can learn from that lawsuit, there are some cases that are either so dark in the criminal world or the true crime world, or so heated on the spectrum of politics that there's no understanding or learning of concepts because it gets so divisive because of the topic. And I choose to opt out of a lot of those topics because my point is to help people understand. You can't understand if you don't want to hear it in the first place. So I cull my content of what I'm going to talk about through that purpose, and then decide what stories we're covering. If I'm torn on things, I will ask my community, hey, do you want to cover this or that? What are you curious about? What do you want to hear about? Do you want to talk to other creators about this thing that might be related to them? And then go through pulling the lawsuit documents, reviewing the lawsuit documents, figuring out if it's in a state that I'm not super familiar with, researching what the laws of that state are, what the state courts have said about those laws. So there's a lot of back end research, unless I'm just doing a quick react like, hey, this lawsuit looks like it's written really spicy. So we're not getting into the deep law of it today. We're talking about how spicy the language is in this lawsuit or the wild stuff that they've included. So it really depends, but everything starts with what's the purpose and does it match what my content is, and going from there. So I guess that is a process. It's a lot, right? I guess that's definitely a process.
Yes, it definitely does sound like a process to me. I want to go back to, in terms of when you first got inspired to go into content creation, right? I had heard in another interview that you had done, I think it might have been with our mutual connection, Desiree Martinez, a previous guest of this podcast. You've been a connoisseur of YouTube for the longest time, right? Like since YouTube has been around in 2006. What was the light switch for you to go from consumer of content to creator of content?
I really wanted to join kind of the tech tube space. I didn't have a lot of people in my immediate circle who wanted to wait in line for new iPhones, talk about new iPhones. And I've always been a real tech nerd, including waiting in line for my first iPhone in 2007 after I finished back-to-back trials. I was like, I cannot be in trial any longer. I have to buy a phone. And that carried through numerous, like, Your Honor, I'm sorry. Can we just put this over till tomorrow? Like, I have to go get in line for the iPhone 4S. Like, it's going to be a 12-hour line. I can't be in court this afternoon. I have no chill. And I really just was looking for a community to talk about tech, because I was still working as a DA, I could not cover anything that was legal. And even then, I knew that putting my face and my name online together did pose some potential career risks and safety risks. However, I was also dealing with some health-related issues. I had multiple back surgeries, adrenal fatigue, and I got to a point where I just didn't care. I'm like, if this is what torpedoes my career, then so be it. But I kind of suspected my health was going to take me out. When I started creating content in 2015, I was already worried that long-term practicing the way I was practicing would have to shift. And I thought that I would step out of the courtroom into different roles within the DA's office that weren't kind of court and public facing. So I was like, well, if that's kind of where we're destined to go because of the back and the other health issues, then might as well find another community online that I enjoy. And so started doing some tech videos, had some that did pretty well for the size of my channel. And that first video went up in 2015, in June, actually 2015, and just kept creating, did some unboxings, talked about my back surgery, talked about career balance and health issues, and just really had more of a variety channel until I started my podcast after I left the DA's office. And then there was a need and a want to take that into video format. And then I really shifted the content on YouTube. It's so funny. I had talked to Sean Cannell probably in 2018 about about my YouTube channel. We had met at a conference and we were hanging out, and I was like, something needs to shift and I don't know what it is. And he's like, you just keep trying until you know what the thing is. Keep experimenting with it. Keep doing what you want to do. Keep connecting with your community and keep shifting, and the thing will click. And it didn't click until 2020, but it had been in my mind that my channel and my content was shifting as I was shifting. And I just kept going with it.
How did you keep going at that time? Like, I mean, you started your channel 2015, and it really wasn't until late last year that things really skyrocketed for yourself.
Yep.
What was the motivation to keep you continuing to create, right? Because there's so many creators out there who get started and then they're like, I don't have like 1 million views after like 5 tries or something like that. Whereas you managed to keep going for the sake of creating in spite of the lack of early returns, so to speak.
The thing is, I went in without expectation. So the fact that anyone watched any of my early videos, if you watched them, I'm sorry and thank you. But the fact that anyone watched any of my early videos blew me away. And I still feel that way when I get on a live stream and there's 4, 5, 10,000 people on a live stream. I'm like, really? We're all here. We're doing this. We're still every time we go live, we're doing this. Okay, this is amazing. I went into it wanting to create and connect. And it doesn't matter if you're connecting with 1 person, 5 people, 10 people. Some of the creators I connected with in my early days of YouTube still are friends. Their streams I still go on. I still am engaged with their channel. One of them helps edit videos with me and has become one of my lead moderators. Those connections mean a tremendous amount to me because that's what I was looking for. I was not looking for 1 million views. I was not looking for full-time content creation. I mean, once I got monetized, I was like, yeah, but then I couldn't hit that $100 threshold. It would take like the entire year to hit the payout threshold. And I was like, dude, I made $100 on YouTube this year. And I was stoked about it because I enjoyed what I was doing. And if you enjoy what you're doing, you will make it work as a content creator. It might not be your full-time thing, but if you enjoy the creation and the audience and the connection, that will carry you through, or at least it did for me, but your expectations have to be realistic.
Yeah, that's such a powerful way of characterizing it, and really just what you said there about like community and connecting with people, right? Like treating every single viewer, whether it's 5 people or 5,000 people, as an individual. I think that's something that gets lost so often with the internet, right? Like we have this great power to connect with one another, right? Like you and I, we met in a clubhouse room.
Absolutely.
Like that's incredible that we can do that. That was not even possible 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
6 months ago.
Yeah,
were you on Clubhouse 6 months ago?
No, I wasn't.
I was on, right?
Exactly. And so it's incredible, right? But like remembering that there is another human being on the other end. And it's so hard to do that with some of the platforms where, especially like YouTube, where you're broadcasting yourself to others. But with live streaming, which, you know, I want to touch base with you on that, there is a way to kind of have that engagement and that interaction to feel that there is another human being on the other end of this dialogue that you're having.
Absolutely, which is what I love about live streaming. First of all, I'm old. It's so funny because people come on my channel occasionally and they're like, oh my God, you're old. I'm like, did you not hear I've been a practicing lawyer for 15 years? Like, I didn't go to law school as a toddler. I'm just, yes, with experience comes age, and I have no problem with that. And before my hair was purple, it was definitely a little bit more gray. But with that, I've learned that most of the times I'm disappointed and most of the times I feel like something has not gone the way I wanted it to is because my expectations weren't met. And that's not anyone else's problem but mine, because I've set the expectation. So on YouTube, I don't set the expectation externally. I set the expectation internally for what I want. And as long as what I am looking for is met, then my expectation's been fulfilled and I'm not disappointed. And I think that we don't always talk about setting expectations, and we don't always do that well. And that's something, I mean, I've been married. We're going on 19 years next month of marriage. Oh, thank you. But through our marriage, expectations have shifted. When my husband's working more, the expectations of who's doing what shifts. When I'm working more, those expectations shift again. As our kids get older, the expectations from them shift, and it has to be a constant communication. So that's something I brought into my channel. And yes, there's times it's disappointing, for sure. There's times you look at the numbers and you're like, well, that's not going how I thought it would. But that's just information, right? It's not judgment, because it's not personal. It just is. I think it was last week, sub numbers just got super funky and everything stopped. And it was so bizarre. And I was like, YouTube's giving me the opportunity to test my theory that I say these things don't matter, because it's real easy to say they don't matter when they're going well. It's harder to say they don't matter when it's not going well. So I'm like, thank you for the opportunity and the reminder, YouTube. But what have you done to my channel? What is happening? And then a week later, it's all back to normal again. So it's that expectation bit for sure. Anyway, live streaming is where we were going before I tangented back into the expectation conversation.
This is great. I always tell people who come on this podcast, and you host a podcast yourself, and I'm sure you feel this way too, where it's like when you go in you go in one direction and then you meander off in another direction, but it brings something else to mind that, like, me as a host, I want to ask about that. And I do want to ask now about setting expectations for yourself. Like, is that just a natural process? Like, I mean, some people might be very regimented in saying, hey, every week or every quarter or at the end of each month, I do my review and then I reset my expectations and go from there. What does that process look like for you?
I've started setting my expectations around my own activity. I have found that for me, setting expectations around ad revenue, subscriber numbers, view time, or whatever it is, I have targets, and I'll look at those being like, hey, can this be better? Is there information here I need? But it's not my expectation, because I'm not in control of that. I'm in control of what I create and what I put out. And if I'm doing that at the cost of sleep, at the cost of eating lunch, which all too often is a problem for me and has been since I was a DA. So part of my expectation is the process of creating and what my work days look like and my availability for my family, my downtime. So all of that goes into what my kind of goals are week by week and what my expectations are week by week. I expect myself to show up consistently with 2 live streams a week and a podcast. That's my expectation for content creation. Then I like to create time to go in and connect with my community in a positive way. I don't respond to a lot of negative comments unless the comments seem to be a misunderstanding that I can clarify. I don't fight with people that are in their feelings about stuff, because there's no useful purpose to it. So I set how I expect myself to show up, and then I look at the results and the outcome and wonder if I could tweak something. If I'm getting a lot of comments like, oh my God, you really didn't get to the point in this video, I'll look at it and be like, oh yeah, I didn't. So I didn't set the expectation for my audience at the outset that we were going to get to 3 topics before we got to this last one. So that is on me. I can clarify that. I can set the expectation for a live stream better, because I didn't do this here, and I can set the expectation for the chat better. And that's what, there was this little like kerfuffle in the chat because I didn't clearly reset the expectation, because I have very strict chat rules, because I don't like Thunderdome chats. Some creators love it when the chat is super fiery. The chat for me is a community, and we treat each other like you would in person. And that includes no name calling. Even if we're talking about people everyone thinks suck, we're still not name calling and things like that. So when I don't set those expectations, then it's an opportunity for me to go, oh, I could reset that better. I could set the expectation for this stream or this video better.
You know, another thing too, you mentioned a moment ago is just how your viewers and listeners of your podcast, they find you and they're like, wow, you're older than I thought. Was there any reservations about that, like in terms of age, your age going into content creation, right? Because I feel like so often we see, especially these days when you hear a lot of conversation and talk about the creator economy, it seems like it's very Gen Z focused, right? But there's opportunity for everybody, regardless of your age, right? And I wonder if that was something that maybe it was like a voice in your head when you started out, like thinking, yeah, maybe am I too old for this? Or is this a young person's game? Like, or were you just guns blazing, I love this, I want to try this out and give it a go?
So I did think about it, and always, and it doesn't bother me, because once again, with age and experience comes the information that I'm able to distill. I can't talk about how I think a trial will play out if I've never been in a trial. So it would be great to have, 17-year-old legal influencers, but seriously, no, you just don't have the life and or legal experience to actually bring value there. There's lots of things that 17-year-olds can probably do way better than I can, but I didn't worry about it because of what my content is. But I also look for creators too. I look for beauty influencers that are in both their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s and above, because I'm not in my 20s. So you can highlight your nose to filth all you want. I'm too old for that shit. I need content creators who are where I'm at. And so I find that my younger members of my audience are like, oh my God, I feel like you're inspirational law mom just telling us what it is. And then the members of my audience that are my age are like, oh my God, I get all your references. We loved the same TV shows when we were all in high school in the 90s. So it doesn't bother me. But there's another content creator, Peter Mon, who does commentary. And he's always like, I'm the old man of YouTube. I don't care. And so I enjoyed watching his content for years before I shifted into commentary, and was like, you know what? Same. 40-year-olds still exist. 50-year-olds still exist. 60-year-olds still exist and should. And there's a lot we can learn from each other. And there's a lot we can learn from Gen Z. Probably not a lot of legal, because probably not through law school yet, but they'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is such a crazy time that we live in, right? I'm the same generation as you. Like we grew up kind of learning these things. We can remember a time where we didn't have these technological tools to our advantage or at our disposal. Yep. But we're going to be in like our 70s using, whatever hot social media app is in existence at that point in time. And it's just become so baked into our existence as people that we're all just kind of learning how to deal with it as we go. So I find that part just very, very fascinating.
Someone has to tell Gen Z that the word stan came from an Eminem song. Someone has to explain the references to pagers in, Destiny's Child songs, because, we didn't have, people have to explain these references, because now that the music we grew up with is retro, you have to explain, no, this is what it is. I was listening to a song with the family yesterday. We went adventuring for Father's Day, and the line in the song was, send me a fax or send me a letter. And my husband and I were busting up, and we're like, right. Because there was no pager, there was no cell phone. This was get in touch with me. Send a fax was like the high tech in this song when it came out. And I feel like if you don't have creators of all age ranges, you have no one to explain some of the lyrics to these songs. My son was asking us about the lyrics to We Didn't Start the Fire. And we were going through all the different lines of We Didn't Start the Fire, talking about what those touch points were in history. And it was really a lot of fun.
It came up fast, didn't it?
Oh, yes, it did.
I was listening to a playlist, like a 90s playlist this weekend, because I had just signed up to, they were offering Spotify Premium for free for the next 3 months for free.
Get it.
Just listening back to that stuff, it's like, wow, this feels like yesterday. Now I know how my parents feel when they say, yeah, the 1970s, they were just, not that long ago, talking to us in the 90s, like that was a long time ago.
Yep.
And now here we are.
After you've been to your 20-year high school reunion and it still feels like it's only been like 5 years, you're like, no, it hasn't been that long, but it has. And it's a lot of, it's a lot of fun. I
love aging. It's great. I think we're like fine wine. Emily, I think we get better as we age.
Wine, whiskey, most things get better. Cheese, most things that are good get better as it ages. Technology, maybe not so much.
Probably not technology. Going back to just the growth of your YouTube channel and the direction that you went, right? Like you kind of started out covering a bunch of different topics. You could have, it's fair to characterize that your YouTube channel was more like a lifestyle channel.
Absolutely.
At the beginning. It seemed like you made this shift into just straight up legal commentary in 2020, correct?
That's correct. September 2020.
Yeah. So what was the decision there for you to say, you know what, I'm going to niche down and into this and lean into my background as a lawyer and make this what my channel is about? So
I had been doing my podcast. After I left the DA's office, I started doing business consulting, business legal consulting for online business owners and entrepreneurs. And I had met people through a wide variety of communities. The ongoing theme is looking for community and enjoying being in different communities. And so when I would be in different entrepreneurial spaces, a lot of people would be like, oh my God, you're a lawyer, but you're so easy to talk to. Can I ask you a question? And I started a podcast with that premise of breaking down legal in kind of with an eye towards entrepreneurs. But then there were all these lawsuits that I was really interested in and wanted to talk about as well. So the content kind of wandered, and sometimes I would tie it back to a business lesson, sometimes not. And so the content on the podcast wandered from just being business and lawsuits related to business with lessons for entrepreneurship to really being legal commentary and news legal commentary, and then leaning more into the pop culture side of things because it was fascinating. As I was doing more on the podcast, I was wanting to create more content for YouTube and just didn't have the bandwidth to be recording podcasts and then maybe vlogging and then doing something else. And I was like, this isn't making sense in a workflow wise or a life wise. And I was at an entrepreneurial mastermind with some friends and talking about Britney Spears, I think the conservatorship with Britney Spears. And people are like, but why isn't any of that on YouTube? Why is it just on the podcast? And at the time, Apple still didn't really have playlists for the podcast. I'm like, you know what? Mm-hmm. It does make sense to start putting this content on YouTube. You can playlist it by case. I could bring up the documents and people could see them if they were curious, or they could just put it on in the background with YouTube Premium and listen like a podcast if they want to. And I can repurpose it to the podcast too. So it's kind of more bang for your buck. I had a number of people be like, look, people want to see your mannerisms and your faces when you make dumb faces about stuff. People want to see you go through this content. And I was like, all right, you're right. Let's start doing more of it. And that was the same. I was away that weekend when Kanye West started putting up his music industry contracts on Twitter.
Right.
And I was losing my mind. I was like, I can't sit here and listen to y'all's business plans. I don't even want to. I don't even want to engage with what's going on over here because I want to talk about this crazy thing that's happening. And I want to read all these things. I want to break them down. I'm so nosy. I want to see what's happening. And I want to talk about it. And so I did that on Instagram Live and uploaded it to YouTube. It started gaining some traction. I had people ask to do podcast interviews to explain that to them. And I was like, oh, it's a resource channel so that other people who are also giving commentary on the people who know Kanye West better and know his music better and know the music industry better can use the legal knowledge to supplement what they're talking about. I can use their content to supplement what I'm talking about. And then it becomes a resource for other creators and for people who are just curious. And then they named themselves the Law Nerds. And then the Toddy Westbrook lawsuits happened in the end of October, November. And in November, my channel grew by 55,000 subscribers. And it was like, away we go. We went from 5,000 to like 70,000 in the matter of months. And we went from just barely hitting 5,000 in October to over 100,000 6 months later. So when I pivoted into that with real purpose of what my content was for, the audience was like, oh, we come here, this is what we get. Yep. This is exactly what it is. This is what it's going to be. And really having that clarity of purpose of what my content is on YouTube, what it is on Instagram, and what it is on Twitter. My audience knows if they want this part of my content, if they want kind of behind the scenes and me rambling about coffee, come follow me on Instagram. But that's not what YouTube's for.
What was that like for you as you saw the numbers just skyrocketing and going up? Was it, I imagine it was part of it, you were elated, you were excited because after years of doing this, all of a sudden, here we go. Like the return on investment is just through the roof. Yeah. But at the same time, I wonder if it's like, holy crap. Like I have a lot of pressure now. Like there are tons of people now who are looking to me for this information.
It took a minute to adjust to the fact that there were more eyes. It definitely took a minute to adjust to the fact that there were more people on live streams and to build out like a moderator squad and stuff to keep the culture of the live streams really a friendly community. And so it took some building in, but I had been in entrepreneurship for a while. So the business side of it wasn't confusing. I think some people that blow up, they're like, where is all this money going to go? It's like, yeah, have a business bank account. Like there's some foundations that you need for sure.
Right.
But I also became much more aware and much more tuned in to making sure that my content could be inclusive, can be accessible, making sure that I was reading out comments for those who either couldn't see the screen or listened in the background. So there were definitely things I tweaked as I got more feedback on my channel. It also brings more haters. Like it was weird to start seeing my face in the thumbnails of other people's videos talking about me. That was a strange phenomenon. There was some Twitter beef that was a strange phenomenon. So there were some definitely strange moments in that, but I'm thankful for the law nerds. I'm thankful for the audience that has really wanted to understand. And I find that people who don't want to understand and just be like, well, this is dumb. I'm like, well, if you don't like the laws, I didn't write them. I'm just here to talk about them. Your state legislature, go vote. Go vote. If you think these laws are stupid, go change them. But it took some mindfulness to really approach it in that way. And I do talk about some hard stories and some news stories that people do not like the results of. And I'm like, I get that you don't like the result of this, but this is the legal result. And that's why when I talk about law, it has to be understand first, then evaluate, then change. Because when you change things without evaluating it, there's all kinds of unintended consequences. And if you don't understand it, you can't really change it. So that's kind of where the triad of what I do came in with the understand, evaluate, change.
Was this, the amount of attention that you have gotten over the last several months as your channel has grown, was this something that you prepared for at all before it happened, or it's just something that you've gone about just learning how to deal with as it's come your way? I've
definitely taken it as it goes because I didn't really prepare. You don't really prepare for something to kind of take off, and not viral in the way some people go viral by any means, but for it to go from 60 people in a live stream to 3,000 and 5,000 in a live stream is definitely a big shift. But I did, as it was growing and as I shifted my content into wanting to be on YouTube full time, and actually, here's the secret to YouTube. Be consistent, post content regularly. So as I went from posting once every 2 months or 3 months or 6 months to posting weekly, I did have a conversation with my husband and my family like, hey, this is a group decision. I'm not going to lean into YouTube and wanting it to grow and granting interviews and being interviewed by, not just podcasts, but also news media and other channels. If we don't want this to grow as a family, if this becomes awkward for us as a family. So it was a group decision. And though my family's not on camera a lot, what I choose to do in my career impacts my family. I became very aware of that as a DA when we had police protection on the house because of cases I was involved in. And I'm aware of that now because where, my face, my name are on the internet. The things I say are on the internet. And I don't ever want that to negatively impact, a kid in junior high going into high school. His friends will find what I do. I'm sure there's some parents out there that are like, I don't know if I can let you go over to the Bakers. I mean, I think Emily just runs around the house swearing all day. I don't. Only on the internet. The cursey words stay within the office. But when you put yourself out there, you have to be mindful of who's receiving it and who's watching it and who has access to that. Even my neighbors, there's times they're like, we were watching you on Friday. And I'm like, I could just wave out my window at your house while I'm live streaming, but you're watching me in your living room. It's a different kind of it's different. Getting recognized out in public is different. As a DA, in the few times that people recognize me out in public, it was a much different feeling. You're like, do I need to call the police? Why do you recognize me? Are you mad about what I've been doing at work? Versus getting recognized now. It's like, oh my God, YouTube, I follow you on YouTube. And that's a different vibe.
I wonder too about dealing with that kind of microfame, so to speak, right? Like it's bizarre, isn't it? It's strange, I would imagine. It's
different. I also have been in therapy for a long time and still do that. I think all creators should. You need people that you can talk to. I talk to other creators as well. And YouTube particularly is different because you create in this bubble of your own home. And especially during COVID, like all of this happened during COVID when you weren't out around other people anyway. So to create in a micro bubble and now start to go back out into the world again is very different. It always surprises my husband when somebody recognizes me and he's like, and I'm like, I have purple hair. It's going to happen. I also have a very recognizable voice. It is going to happen. I got in trouble in elementary school, junior high, and high school because teachers heard me. They're like, I don't know who all was there, but I heard you. I know you were involved. And that's still the case. If you hear me speaking out in public and you listen to my podcast, you're going to know it's me. But I don't know. It's nice to have a community, and I love having a community. I do the things that I need to do to make sure that, my home address isn't on the internet and to be mindful of that. But also, I don't know. I don't think doing legal commentary brings the same level of fans that we're seeing issues with the Kardashian Jenners right now. They're having issues with stalkers and things like that. I don't foresee that. We're going to knock on wood, but I did get death threats for one of the cases that was loud thunder. I did get death threats for one of the cases I was covering. And that was a fairly surreal experience as a creator, because as a DA, I was prepared for that. You expect it working in law enforcement. People aren't always going to be thrilled with the work that you're doing. You know that going into it. The victims' families are happy with you. The defendants' families are not. Sometimes the victims' families aren't either. Being a DA brings that. But as a creator, I was like, I'm just talking about like lawsuits that are available publicly. I don't understand why people are so bent out of shape about it, but doesn't stop them from being that way.
It's something that I'm so curious about when I have guests on this show who have, like you, have amassed a certain level of following, right? It's because you have influence, a high level of influence, but at the same time, you still are able to enjoy some level of relative anonymity, right? Like it's almost like this sweet spot, right? Like I'm sure you wouldn't want to be like Kim Kardashian, like, because that's just ridiculous. That kind of fame and scrutiny and people just wanting to know all of your day to day. But some of the perks of having that influence is very powerful, right? Like the ability to, again, influence people and kind of drive change, especially if that's something that you want to do and drive change in the world.
Absolutely.
It's pretty powerful to have that, that YouTube has given you.
It is powerful. And it's something that when I don't call out people much on my channel or my content. It's not for me to judge what anybody's doing. And most times in lawsuits, anyone can get sued for anything. I enjoy a sassy lawyer with some spicy writing. But at the end of the day, a lot of lawsuits end up settling or getting dismissed. And we never know if the things that were said are 100% true or kind of true or have true. We don't know. But the times I have called out people on my channel is generally content creators who I think are not, like Rachel Hollis, who got sued for plagiarism, but are not being upfront with their audience, because that's the one thing. With great power comes great responsibility. Do kids not watch enough Spider-Man these days. Like, do they not know? Have they not learned the wisdom from Uncle Ben?
The problem, Emily, is that the Uncle Ben is not in the recent iteration of Spider-Man.
That is
need
exactly
to bring him
the
back.
problem. We needed Uncle Ben. We needed the with great power comes great responsibility, because that's what I'm seeing from the influencers that have ended up in scandal and legally related scandal, like a David Dobrik or a James Charles, is that I think it's very hard to wrap your head around the level of influence and impact that even the things you do that you think are in private aren't in private. The poor decisions, the putting people in danger when it comes to David Dobrik, that those are things that are not well thought out. But I always have to remind myself that some of these creators are very, very young. And when you mix that fame, especially at like a Dobrik or a Charles level, of fame and instant recognizability, tons and tons of money, like bananas amounts of money, people who want to be around you because of the fame or access and bananas amount of money. And then you're also young, like college age young. People do dumb shit at that age. It just doesn't often get blasted to the internet. And when you have influence and audience, you don't always have the grace to do, with James Charles, it's criminal stuff. But with David Dobrik, a lot of it is just really bad decision making. Not all of it. Some of it's really bad. But with that, you don't see anyone giving that guidance of, no, you are running a business, a multi-million-dollar business. You can't just do whatever. You need HR and contracts, and you can't just get an excavator and swing your friend around on it because you think it's funny. Like, that's not safe. You can't just do that. So I see that with great power comes great responsibility side of influence not always being understood. I'm in my 40s. I'm very mindful of it. I get people like, oh my God, I'm going to go to law school because of you. I'm like, hold time out. Don't go to law school because of me. What I do is unique to me.
Right.
Go to law school because you want to learn law, make change, take on $200,000 of student debt for fun to see how long it takes you to pay it off and turn it into a sport. Have a reason to do it. Don't just do it because of me. If I gave you permission to be yourself and be a lawyer, beautiful. If you always wanted to be a lawyer and thought you couldn't because you're ADHD, and I've somehow broken down that barrier and going, oh no, we can do this, wonderful. But don't decide that this is the career path you want to take, because this is unique to my life and my experience, and trying to duplicate what another creator has done is always, I think, a dangerous thing, because the expectations aren't well aligned.
Right.
It's a long conversation about influence.
Well, you bring up some salient points there, and I wonder for you personally, like, how do you these days separate between Emily the creator and Emily the mother and wife? How do you find balance? How do you try to find balance in your life these days between these things? Because obviously you work from home, right? Like your office is in your home. How do you do that? What are the challenges that you have to overcome to find that equilibrium when it comes to work and having your personal life?
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this question, because I am terrible at this. And I just freely admit that I'm terrible at this. I don't really think of my life as balance. I try to just have flow in what I do. It's different and it changes. And I think there's a lot of kind of the celeb entrepreneurs that will say, this is how you time block your perfect day, and this is how it all works. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, but I've got like 2 kids distance learning who are now home from school. My husband has recently retired and is now helping me in aspects of my business, and everybody's home all the time. So I can time block till the cows come home, but it doesn't mean that anything's going to get done in that time block that I put there. So I try to make sure that I have some boundaries around when I'm online, when I'm not online. I have boundaries around how much I engage in online spaces. I do No Social Sunday, and more I'm finding that No Social Sunday kind of rolls over into not being on social much on Mondays either. And that tends to be the day that I get a lot of work done, because there's no expectation for me to be on social. And then I stream on Tuesday. So that's kind of when I'm like, hey, we're back into the work week. And I set parameters around that. When I'm with my family, I'm with my family. If I'm working, I'm working. Yes, there are times after a live stream that I'll answer things on my phone. But if I'm going to tell my 13-year-old not to be discording his friends on his phone, I can't sit on the couch and be answering YouTube comments on my phone. So I try to set boundaries around that. I absolutely put my phone in a drawer if I'm struggling, and we'll be like, okay, it's dinner time. The phone's turned off and in a drawer. I also have perspective from being a DA when there were times work would be all encompassing when you're in trial, when you have witnesses who are being threatened, things like that sometimes those phone calls could actually be very serious. With YouTube, there's nothing really that serious that's going to come up in 4 hours when I'm with my family in the evening that's going to be an issue. Like, the phone can go off. It's not that deep. But that's a boundary anyone can set. You can turn your phone off and step away from your computer. You just have to want to. And sometimes I don't want to. And that's where I struggle with the balance, because I like working. I like what I create. I like talking about the stuff I talk about. I like watching the Housewives show to see if they're talking about stuff that's coming up in the lawsuits. And so I have to bumper that not everyone in my personal life wants to hear about the stuff I'm talking about on YouTube all the time, because it really is the stuff I like talking about the most. And my husband's like, I don't care about Jen Shaw's lawyer's motion. I'm like, but no, she's saying that they couldn't interview her because her contact was dry. It's ridiculous. He's like, no, save it for a live stream. Just talk to the law nerds about it. And that's where I find that kind of flow in what I'm doing. I don't know if it's balanced. It's such a black and white thing, balance.
Yeah.
It just we have to set boundaries, I guess, with our work. And when things are happening, like if something has really happened that is a big thing, I will go live in the evening and be like, this just happened, we're talking about it. But most of the time, nothing is going to be that deep that I have to drop everything and get on the internet and talk about it. I've built my content so I don't have to do it that way.
Yeah. Personally, I like to think of it as just like, there are just seasons in life where you're just like intense, you're going, you're all out, you're really focused on achieving whatever it is that you want to achieve. And then there's another season where you're just kind of maybe chill, you're taking a step back. I don't know. Absolutely. That's what works for me. I don't know for other people out there, maybe they are able to do the other kind of work-life balancing thing. The
marathon, not a sprint cliche actually applies, I think, to content creation very much, because I find that in times I would try to push too much. It's like, I've got to get this done. I need a break, but I have set up my content to be consistent and weekly. So I can't push and then pull back. So I have to find balance in making sure that my content is consistent. And that means when I turn it off and go to bed, I have to rest because I am inconsistent. If I do push, then I have to pull back in other places. So if I throw in extra live streams, then something's going to have to get cut. And it's just being mindful of that you don't have to push all the time. I don't love hustle culture. I'm sure that shocks you. There are times that you absolutely have to hit it while it's hot, but most of the time, it's not all going to collapse if you step away from the internet for a day, a week, turn off your phone for a weekend. It's still going to be there when you log back in.
Yeah. It's so important, I think, to build, we talk about systems earlier, like systems that are sustainable so that you can do this for the long haul. Like, that's one of my favorite topics on this podcast to talk with creators about, is just like how they've approached this is just, like you said, a marathon, not a sprint, and how they can just keep generating content on an indefinite basis because it doesn't feel like work to them. They've set it up to a point where they can do this and not feel like, oh my God, I'm freaking out, like I have a video due tomorrow or something like that. It
becomes the outlet to the stuff I would want to do anyway. A lot of this stuff I would want to research anyway. And so what I found was happening, particularly the kind of the coalescing moment when I was at that mastermind and didn't want to work on my business at all, and didn't want to talk about consulting. I just wanted to read these contracts and find other people on the internet that were talking about them. It was a friend there who I've worked with quite a lot in this process who was like, why isn't this just your work then? And I was like, you ask the big questions. I should just make this the work then, because I feel guilty wanting to sneak away from like what I should be doing. Like I should be making an email funnel, but I don't want to. I want to read Kanye West contracts before they get taken down off the internet or he gets sued for leaking them, which never happened, by the way. I was shocked. So he's like, the things that you are like, drop everything because you want to do it. That should be the work thing. And so now I don't feel guilty spending the time to pull up, you know, a lawsuit that's going on with a housewife and reading all the legal motions and going on that journey and bringing my audience with me because I've built the work around the thing I would want to do anyway and was feeling guilty about spending time doing. I felt like I should be working, but I want to do this. And now I want to do this has become the working. And that's what's created the ability to say, I get to talk about this every week. So it's okay that we get to just keep up with the things that are going on. And I love it. And when I first shifted, my husband's like, what's going to happen if you run out of things to talk about? I'm like, I have a list right now of probably 16 to 20 cases that are like all ranked number one of the thing I want to get to next. And then a list that's substantially longer than that of back stuff I want to get to. But I don't think I will ever run out of stuff because America is nothing if not litigious. And our pop culture celebrities keep getting sued. And I think that the lawsuits in the creator space and the YouTube influencer space are going to keep growing. Things like Firefest are going to happen again. And we're going to see like the frenemies break up. They didn't have a contract. The two massive creators built a massive podcast that had to be pulling in a couple $100,000 a month. And there were no contracts, and they leaked all the text messages. I could talk about that forever, like half the business contracts. But once things started rolling, my husband's like, oh, you're never going to run out of things to talk about. Because there's always like, if it's not a lawsuit that's happening, it's brewing, or it's like, this could be legal because of these things. There's always something. And that has sure proven to be the case.
Yeah. I mean, there's an infinite amount of content and things to talk about out there. I mean, we're living in the information age, so there's no shortage of information out there, especially as you allude to there with the creator economy space. I mean, we're kind of like in the early innings of this, and it feels like it's just about to really take off in terms of these creators now kind of crossing over into mainstream pop culture, right? Yep. Where now you see like the traditional media acknowledging them, like for example with the whole Logan Paul Mayweather fight a couple weeks ago, right? Like these, it just seems like
I paid for it and watched it. I mean, it was hard. It was a horrible streaming experience. Showtime did a terrible job, but I paid for it and watched it. I was fascinated. I was like, this is pop culture. And Mayweather's like, in his press conference, because I watched the whole after press conference, Mayweather's like, say, and that streamed on YouTube, by the way, much better than Showtime streaming, much better. But he's like, write what you want about me. I made like $100 million. So I don't care if you want to shade me for fighting a YouTuber. I showed up for like, you know, a gentle boxing match and made all of the money in the world. He was talking about his shorts being sponsored for $30 million. I think we are definitely in this big crossover, and we're seeing it with mainstream commercials are using songs that are trending on TikTok. And the only reason I know that is because I'm on TikTok, and I'm like, oh, this is popular on TikTok right now. So of course they're trying to use it to sell washing machines or whatever, because somebody's kid's ear is going to perk up and be like, oh my God, I know that song. We are getting to a crossover, and we're starting to see like James Charles is being sued by a former employee. We're going to see more employment lawsuits. I think we're going to see more lawsuits like the H3 podcast getting sued by Triller for talking about their fight. I mean, it's a stupid lawsuit and it's fair use, but where the boundaries are of intellectual property. And then we're seeing lawsuits. There was a lawsuit from Ice Cube versus Robinhood Financial, the trading app. And there's a lawsuit, the Nike Satan shoes lawsuit that the Nas X one. Well, it was mischief. But yes, that whole thing, those were PR as much as they were lawsuits. So we're seeing this hybrid where lawsuits are getting covered in a different way. So lawsuits have this PR component. And then you have lawsuits with regard to social media influencers like wedding dress designer Haley Page, where she's making comments about her lawsuit directly to her audience on Instagram and then getting sued for defamation on the other side of the lawsuit for the things she said about the lawsuit on Instagram. It's becoming this social media inception. And I think we're going to see lawsuits blending with PR more and more. We're going to see influencers continuing to test the boundaries of intellectual property because they just don't understand. And we're going to see the courts eventually addressing intellectual property, employment law, and all these concepts that traditional business has been dealing with, but that the internet has been treating like the Wild West. And it's interesting times. It's very interesting times. And I am here to watch it all unfold.
How do you think the law is going to catch up to all of this? Because it seems like, the internet has just grown like unimpeded for like the last 20 plus years, right? Like YouTube has developed into this behemoth since 2006 when it started, 2005 when it started. And now all of these laws like that were in place to govern like media coverage, right? Like it's so antiquated now with how content and how people consume content and how people create content these days. I just kind of wonder about your take on how the government can even keep pace with all this innovation that's happening in the world.
We saw this a little bit during the Cambridge Analytica hearings with Mark Zuckerberg. When you saw, and I had worked in Congress for a summer, and so I was sitting there going, the research assistants and the individuals that work for the members of Congress and Senate are much younger. I could feel behind the scenes them trying to explain how WhatsApp works to their members of Congress, and their members of Congress being boomer about it and just being like, I don't know. And then trying to inquire with Mark Zuckerberg. You really got the sense that half these members of Congress cannot turn on their computer and check their email. And they're the ones in charge of regulating social media, which is terrifying to me. I think as we get younger and younger members of Congress, and I don't even know, with the way culture has shifted, social media has made running for politics a whole different bag, and that's interesting too. But as you get state level congressmen and senators wanting to really connect with younger voters, I think talking about safety on social media, cyber harassment, stalking, sexting, and all of these issues that are very real to teens and young adults. Cyber harassment is very real to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Sexting and minors sexting and catfishing is a very real issue to people in that age group. It's just getting young enough members of government to catch up, or members of government having their kids going through this stuff to start to catch up, and people asking for it, which I feel like is part of where I come in, is understand, if you think that this should be illegal, here's why the laws aren't that way. Here's the struggle the law is having with some of these cyber crimes. Let's talk about that so that you know what you want to ask for or to see change for or to push for change for, because most of the change we see comes from people asking for change. So I think understanding is a critical component of that. I think we've got a long way to go with particularly like the criminal cyber laws. It's very hard to prove who's behind the phone or who's behind the account. With stuff like, transparency in regulation, when YouTube just shuts down a channel, for example, and gives no explanation, that channel can't go around and sue YouTube. They say they are. I mean, Steven Crowder says he's suing YouTube. I haven't seen the actual documents get filed yet, but says he's suing YouTube for the strikes against his channel to get some transparency. But YouTube's kind of protected right now under some of the regulations and can't get sued. Like, how do you get transparency if you can't sue? Because that's generally how we right wrongs in the US. It's like someone wronged you or stole from you or hit you in their car, you can sue them. That's how you fix it. But if you get shut down on social media and that's your business and you can't sue them to get transparency, what recourse are you left with to fix it? And those are the questions we're going to keep struggling with, because then it's who should be regulating it. And these are private businesses and they have to protect their business interest. So there are a lot of very big concepts at play, and it will be very interesting to see. I think transparency kind of becomes the key to that. And we'll see how that goes with social media, because in their best interest, they don't want to be transparent. And if they're not going to get sued by creators banding together for class actions, which you can't do under the terms of use at the moment, then what's their impetus to really change?
Yeah, there's so many questions.
I have lots of questions. I have questions. I do not have answers. I'm just going to keep asking the questions and saying, these are the problems I see. I can spot the issue like nobody's business. These are the problems I see. These are the tangential problems I see. And if we keep talking about the problems we see, hopefully people smarter than me will start to come up with those solutions, because I don't know. other than to keep asking the questions.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing as we navigate this new world that we live in, is just like asking better questions. I think that's what's so great about having a podcast, is where you're challenging yourself to become a better question asker, to increase your curiosity about things. And because it's so important, because this is just uncharted territories that we're navigating in this world that we live in today. I want to go also, Emily, back into you. And we touched on this a moment earlier about, your content creation schedule, live streaming. What is it about live streaming that gravitates to you? Like, why are you drawn to that as like your primary way of, or one of your primary ways of creating video content for YouTube and Instagram?
It really is my primary way of creating content. And I have a lot less nerves sitting down to live stream twice a week than I do to sit down and record the podcast, or sit down and record like a video for upload. That actually, it takes me longer sometimes to create things to be uploaded than to just live stream it. And I don't know what that is. I really enjoy streaming. I'm actually considering just starting to stream my podcast creation and then edit it afterwards and just leave it for the members when I stream it and be like, look, we're just going to stream it. It feels different. But I like the instant feedback. I like connecting with my audience quite a lot. And I like having a conversation. I've said since, even since I left the DA's office, that law is a conversation, because I come with a lot of experience in the language that I use. So if I don't see the chat going, what is this? Sometimes I will forget that I need to break it down one step further. And I can do that contemporaneously to be like, oh, let me break it down even further. Let me get down even further. And I love that feedback because it makes me a better content creator. And it also makes me go one step further to explain things better. I like the community that has grown in the chat, where people see each other week after week after week and connect with each other. At the beginning of most of my streams, people shout out where they're from. I'm always floored by how international my audience is, but it's really fun seeing people together be like, oh my God, I'm in Korea too. And see them all see everybody chatting with each other. Or, oh my God, I'm in Australia too. And how excited they get to connect with other law nerds on their side of the world and in their state, and people who are all drinking the same thing, because we talk about, what are you drinking? What coffee are you drinking today? And people are like, well, it's night for me, so I'm doing this. And I love that connectedness. This has always been about community. It's always been about having a conversation, and live streaming is one of the best ways to have a conversation with your audience. And often when I do uploads, I will premiere them so I can be in the chat too and have that conversation real time. It feels like an AOL chat room. I think I had an AOL chat room open my entire freshman and sophomore year of college with my friends. We just left it open all the time. Like, no password on the computer, nothing, just a chat room, just open all the time in my dorm room. But
oh my gosh,
it feels the same way in the chat when I upload a video, and I get to be there too. So it's fun for me. I love streaming. I structure my streams so that it can be fun, but that content, if it needs to be clipped out, that the content segments, I timestamp them. I try to keep the content segments clean, so if somebody really just wants a 10-minute answer, they can go and find just that part and not have to go through all the other live stream stuff. And that's made it a resource. And that's really grown my channel, that other content creators have used my explanations of things as a resource. And I see it in my subscription numbers. Phil DeFranco put up a clip of my show on his show, and I could see the influx of people. And then the next live stream, I'm like, who's here from Phil DeFranco? And it's like, me. And you can see it kind of blow up in the chat. So that's really been that resource bit, and keeping it so people can find exactly what they're looking for has helped also grow the audience and grow the channel.
You brought me back there with the AOL chats. I was all of a sudden in my mind while you were saying that, I heard, you've got mail.
You've got mail.
The old instant message sound.
It was so much fun. And even in law school, we had AIM, and that's how we would communicate with each other in class. So it's changed law school too, because it used to be that you had a notepad, pen, and paper, and the Socratic method where your professor would drill down on you. It's kind of actually like being in live chat where people drill down on and are like, but what about this? And can you explain that? And can you explain it further? Maybe that's why I like it so much. It just brings me back. brings me back to law school, where your professors would just drill down on thought. But then as technology evolved, you had this group think with your group of friends who would be like, no, it's on page 26. And you're like, it's right here. I know the answer, because you could crowdsource the information. And I think that's a great thing if we know how to think critically, so we can evaluate the information we're getting when we crowdsource it. And I think that's the component that's really important. And we do that in the chat too. There's times I'll forget. I'll be like, this movie, it was blah, blah, and the chat will come up with it immediately. I'm like, thank you, chat. The answers have appeared. And I love that about it. I love crowdsourcing information. It's great.
How do you go about moderating all of this? You mentioned that you have people within your community who you've trusted as like gatekeepers, so to speak. How did you find those people? How did you evaluate whether they would be good in that role? Just kind of go over what moderation of the dialogue and the conversation in your live streams is like.
Oh, don't just throw wrenches at people. Bringing people in as moderators, for me, is like bringing people into your inner circle. And my moderators have more access to me than most other people do, because we need to talk about the community that we're building, the community values, and the values in the chat. If things get off the rails, which occasionally we do talk about stuff that's political, stuff gets off the rails. We will bounce people if you're threatening people's lives and calling names and stuff like that. We don't do that in my chat, but making sure that the moderators are on board with that, and making sure they also know sometimes when the chat's really busy, it's not the same experience as when you're just a member of the community getting to talk, because you are actively engaging and sometimes playing whack-a-troll, sometimes putting out fires, sometimes answering questions. It's not the same as just getting to engage with the content and comment. We have an onboarding process for moderators. So I have head moderators that help me vet people, and we go through and look, because if you're a moderator on my channel, but you are wilding out on people on Twitter, it is going to impact not just me and my channel, but also you. Also, if you are a content creator and you're one of my moderators, people will know and will connect us and our content together. So you need to know as a content creator that my content doesn't offend your audience. If somebody had an audience that did not curse and would be very deeply offended by the things I say, not a good fit as a moderator, because our content will get connected whether you want it to or not. People will know. If you are in the community, the commentary community at all, you will see a lot of like, I was a mod for so-and-so exposed. Like there are for sure a genre of videos, and you want to make sure that the people you bring into your inner circle are A, treated with respect, and B, have kind of clear tasks and roles and a clear expectation of what your chat is and what the chat rules are, so that they can help you create the community that you want to create. And they are really ambassadors for your community and for your brand. And they have to be good with that, not just on YouTube, but also on other social medias if they are known on other social medias. So there's a vetting process, there's an onboarding process, there's that we look at people across social media before we ask if they want to do it. And we work together. There's times people are like, you know what, this has been a lot. The topics have been heavy. I need to step back for a few months. And we're like, we're here when it's right for you. And we keep open communication with our mod squad.
Are you guys just like chatting over like a text group message, or do you guys ever go on like video calls or anything like that to kind of
We do both. We use Slack and we do Zoom calls.
Wow. Okay. And so you set all of that up beforehand. Like this is something that you've had to set up as your subscriber base has grown over the last several months. What was it like before
I didn't have moderators? I mean, I would have 60 people in a live stream and I would moderate it myself, which was pretty easy to do when it's 60 people on the live stream. So I would mostly moderate just to allow comments, because I curse a lot. So people want to curse in their comments too. And it gets blocked by Google. So it was mostly just approving comments, and occasionally block somebody if they were spamming, pretty rarely. Then I don't remember which live stream it was that grew, and one of my friends was like, you need mods, I've got you. And so there were a few people that had been in my community for quite a long time that I knew personally and well. And so they became my first 3 moderators. I was like, literally like, I don't know how to wrench people. This is crazy. Why are there so many people in this live stream right now? And I had one live stream. It was literally 60 people in my live stream on Friday. And then on Tuesday, I had premiered a video and did a live stream Q&A after. And it was like 3,000 people. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with this. So I had a friend that was telling me, who's one of my head mods, telling me how to add her as a moderator in the back end of my channel. Because at that point, I didn't. Having mods is critical if you were going to regularly live stream. Unless you choose to do something like the H3 podcast, you have to pay to be a member of their channel if you want to chat at all, and they do not moderate their chat, and they let you know they don't moderate it. I don't know if they leave their chat up when their videos go live afterwards, but they don't moderate their chat. I leave my chat up, so if people watch on the replay, they can see the conversation happening, and that's part of why I moderate my chat. So it is always a community. But yeah, we built in quite a structure for it. One of my business buddies, who's also kind of the right hand in my business, we've known each other since before I left the DA's office, and she's worked with entrepreneurs of all sizes, moderating Facebook groups of 100,000 people. And so we brought a lot of that experience that my friends had with Facebook moderation in large groups with fanatical communities, really, and structured it out the same way to bring on moderators.
So, Emily, as we kind of wrap things up here, one of the final topics I do want to touch base with you on is just the business of Emily D. Baker. What does this look like for you today in terms of what income streams you have coming in, how you're structuring all of that? What does the business side of things look like for you?
Absolutely. I moved my business when we left California to Tennessee, which is lovely. And I have a formal business entity. Baker Media is my LLC here in Tennessee. And my income streams right now are YouTube AdSense, sponsorships and brand deals, merchandising, which is more of a community connectedness than it is a giant revenue generator. I want people to be able to feel connected with the community more than make money on it. So merch is kind of one of those things that's there, but it's like, but it kind of is at the break even point of merchandising. Right. I do some consulting still, one-on-one. It is very hard to grab me for consulting these days, but I do some consulting still in more of the business aspect of it or pre-litigation, not in the legal space. And then I had digital products before. I cut those. I might have digital products again. That's really it. I mean, YouTube has been very good to me. I've ended up making more on just YouTube alone without sponsorships and stuff like that, more than I was making as a DA. And that's absolutely blown me away. But YouTube is flexible. So there needs to be a plan for that. And I definitely have a plan for that in place. So I think that covered all the income streams.
Are there any other opportunities in the future that you may want to explore, right? Like one thing that comes to mind when you talk about how strong your community of law nerds are, right, is potentially, especially as the world is opening back up, is maybe doing like in-person events or anything like that. I mean, is there anything on that front or other kinds of business opportunities that you're thinking about maybe dipping your toes into?
Absolutely. Though at the moment, because I've been asked a lot to do in person, at the moment, it feels really overwhelming to me. So I will start building in some meetups as I'm traveling for speaking events. And what I will probably do is I've seen a lot of podcasters I enjoy do kind of a live recording of their podcast. So you kind of go to the podcast and do a meetup. I could see doing a live stream that is a actual live with an audience live stream and then doing a meetup after that where you get to hang out, something that has value. Because I came from the entrepreneur world, I'm like, do I want to do like a conference with speaker? No, I don't want to do that at all. But I'm still trying to break my mind out of those models because I've really moved into a full-time content creator model, which is very different than a digital product service-based entrepreneur. So yes, getting together with the law nerds in person will happen. I've been asked about books, and that is kind of in the works. I don't know if I will relaunch my digital. I had a digital course about kind of business basics. I don't know whether I will relaunch that, but I've been thinking of it as I get asked more and more about, hey, I'm a creator and I've started making money and now what do I do? I'm like, I have this thing. I could probably do that. But for now, it's been really building out the foundation of what my workflow is like so that I have a lot of time to do the other things I want to do. There's beautiful hiking in Middle Tennessee. My son and I enjoy competitive archery. So there's other life stuff that I want to do. So now it's trying to narrow the work down so that I have more time for the life stuff and then branching back out from there.
Awesome. Well, Emily, this has been a fun conversation for me. I'm so glad that you were very gracious with your time. And this was, again, incredible. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I love a good conversation. I love to chat about, I really do love YouTube and content creation. So it's a lot of fun to just get to talk about all of the behind the scenes stuff that I don't always talk about in my content. So thank you for asking me and thanks for the conversation. I look forward to hanging out on Clubhouse some more.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to do it again.
Love to.
Once again, thank you to Emily D. Baker for joining me on this episode, this edition of the Video Craft Show presented by Video Husky. If you would like to follow Emily and find her YouTube channel, and plus all the things that we discussed in this particular episode, any notes and whatnot, you can go and find the show notes for this particular episode at www.videocraftshow.com. And if you are a creator that struggles to script and formulate your ideas in a very coherent and efficient manner, we have a resource for you. All you have to do is just download our free scripting template. Doing so can help you do all of the things that I just mentioned. Structure your videos better. Make them more, I don't know. I'm not good at this. Hit the button that says a free resource for you and sign up to get a copy of our free scripting template. Doing so will help you structure your ideas and make the process of filming and shooting your videos much more efficient. Again, all you have to do is just sign up to our email list, and the copy of the video scripting template will be delivered straight to your inbox right after you sign up. If you are enjoying this podcast, please make sure to subscribe and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And you can subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast, not just Apple Podcasts. You can get us on Spotify, you can get us on Stitcher, you can get us on Castbox, you can get us on all kinds of different platforms. Whatever it is, whatever your flavor is in terms of podcasting, podcast players, you can find us there. So subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell if you haven't done that as well. Leave a comment. And let us know what you think about this episode. Let us know what you think about every single episode. We are reading all of the feedback that comes our way. Of course, I want to thank my team for editing and putting together and producing this podcast. Got to shout out my producer, Nikki, editor, Ingrid, as well as our graphics guy, Paolo, for handling everything when it comes to the Video Craft Show. If you would like your videos to be edited to look just like this, Video Husky can help. All you have to do is just go to www.videohusky.com to learn more. We will see you again on another episode, another edition of the Video Craft Show presented by Video Husky. That is all for now. Thanks for tuning in.